Welcome to the Happy Mama Movement podcast. I'm Amy Taylor-Kabbaz, mama, journalist, coach, and founder of Mama Rising. This podcast is a space of community and collaboration. We gather stories of matrescence, motherhood, womanhood, and change told by our Mama Rising coaches and mothers around the globe, in the knowing that through our stories, we can begin to heal and change the way the world sees, values, and supports mothers everywhere. So, welcome to the Happy Mama Movement. Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited to bring you my special guest today. I am having a bit of a moment. I have been a huge fan of Leonie Dawson for such a long time. I was just telling her, I think I bought my first workbook from you, I don't know, probably 8 years ago, I think by now. So if you don't know, Leonie Dawson is an internationally best-selling author of the 2024 My Brilliant Year workbooks, formerly known as the Goal Getter workbooks, which have been used by over 500,000 people worldwide, including me. This has generated over $13 million in revenue while only working 10 hours a week and being a mama to 2 girls. She has won so many awards, is recognised in so many different places, and also, I have to say, has a die-hard following. This energy that you're about to hear will make sense when you know, once you are in her energy, it's just infectious. But there was something that I wanted to bring her on to the podcast about today. I saw it on Instagram, and the minute I saw it, I thought, this is what I want Leonie to talk to you all about, especially because Leonie's energy is so usually bubbly and contagious and honest and bright and creative and flowery and all of the things. And then I read this. Sometimes I spend a lot of my time measuring up all my failings as a mother. I worry that I'm too introverted, that I don't engage enough, that I read too much, that I need quiet time in order to be okay in my body. I think I am less than the perfect mother because I crave, I adore my work, and I take time away each day to do it. I see so painfully all my failings, my spiky bits, the hard parts, and I hope my daughters can forgive me for them when they are older. The truth of parenting is I absolutely do not enjoy parenting every single minute of every single day, and I think it's downright bullshit and so harmful when any person claims to or tells you you should. I love my children deeply and ferociously. I would choose them again. I was born to be their mother, and still it is hard and fraught with the pains of being human, of living in a world with physical and energetic limitations. I've spent a long time feeling anxiety and shame about my inside feelings. I didn't think they were the right feelings to have, that it made me a bad person to have them, that I wasn't allowed to feel them, and I sure as fuck couldn't speak about them. I don't know what changed for me. All I know is once I started speaking my truth, my full truth, the one that isn't pretty or easily resolved or inspiring, life got deeper and a little more true. There's comfort here, a softness. I am doing the best I can. I cannot do everything. I cannot be like anybody else, but I can be the mother that I am. I can be me in all of this. Wherever you are on this big old path, I just want to send a wish from my heart that you and I both know we are allowed to have all our feelings, that we are worthy enough just as we are, and that we are the mothers we were destined to be. Leonie, that was actually quite hard to read out. I don't know if you could hear, but that is such a beautiful and powerful message. So first, can I just say thank you for putting it in such beautiful, clear, vulnerable, and honest words. How does that hear that back?
oh, it feels like fresh and new, like somebody's like reading like their most private diary to me. And I also, yeah, like it's always fascinating when I hear my own writing back.
Mm.
And then I also just feel the ways as well that just, my heart hurts for myself when I know for so long why I had that belief that I had to be perfect and enjoy every moment, and
Mm.
how hard it was to give up on that and be gentle with myself and recognize reality.
Mm.
Um, and so I offer up that big lesson of mine in any hope that if anyone's in pain, that they can find comfort in that too.
Yeah, well, I did, and I know so many others did as well. I think maybe we could start with that beautiful beginning where you said you thought you needed to be less introverted, that you shouldn't read so much, that you shouldn't work so much, that you shouldn't, this real belief that my personality is going to affect, or my needs or my way of living is going to affect the outcome of my children. Oh, what
Mm,
a responsibility we put on ourselves around that.
mm. Yeah, and it's amplified because I think I was so judgmental of myself for those ways. And like I read all the parenting books before I even got pregnant. I was so committed that I wanted to do it well. And I think that's a hard part when you're an overachiever and you're used to getting an A and stuff and you want to get an A. And then to discover that parenting you can't easily get an A, but you're just going to like absolutely read everything and try and apply it, and you're not going to be able to do it all. Um, and that's a really, really hard thing to come up against. I remember like there was one book in particular that really set me in a big spin when I had my first daughter. And I can't even remember the name of the book, but it was written by an anthropologist who wasn't a parent. But she talked about her anthropological perspectives of babies that don't cry, and it's because they were held all the time. And it's kind of famous in like really crunchy, hippie
Mhm.
parenting communities. Um, but I took it so literally, I didn't even put my daughter down for 9 months. And I developed such excruciating postnatal depression and anxiety that I couldn't sleep, and my body was just rigid constantly. I used to remember that I would cook dinner and have to lay down as I like between stirs and have a panic attack on the floor. Um, and for me to realize, like, oh, that's actually not taking great care of myself. And I need to find a different way of doing this. I was living so much in reaction to wanting to do parenting differently from how my parents did it.
Yeah.
Um, it was painful. And then to discover years later that I have autism. And so I actually don't survive well if I don't have alone time. I like it's the only way that I can fuel back up and be okay in myself is to have alone time and nobody on my skin. And there was so much, I felt like there was so much shaming around, like, if you're not skin to skin all the
That's right.
time.
Yeah. When you think about that, that young mama on the floor with her panic attack, I mean, gosh, I'm just flooded with compassion and sadness that that was your experience. But when you think back to it now, how do you feel, or what do you see?
Oh, I just see how much I was in such a hard place with that, and what relief I feel knowing, I'm 14 years in and I'm much more gentle on myself, and um, I know what works for me and what doesn't. I'm more able to look after myself, and I still do parenting in a way that was different from how I was raised, but um, in a way that's much more in tune with who I am and who my kid is. Like the thing with all parenting books is that they don't take into account your individual needs or the needs of your child and who that kid is. Um, so yeah, being a lot more softer around that is key.
So, what was that process from then till now? As you said, your eldest is 14. and you have another
Mm.
daughter who's 10, and, that was a long and winding road to get to writing that post, I'm sure. So if
Mm.
someone's listening and was brought to tears hearing it like I was, what has been that road to get from there to here?
Ooh. Um, First, for me, I've done a lot of work um in therapy. For me though, just like cognitive behavioral therapy, it doesn't necessarily work very well for me, especially as a neurodivergent person. It's gold standard for neurotypical people, but not
Mm,
necessarily for neurodivergent people. It can make you kind of fixate on stuff even worse. So for me, what's worked best is working with positive psychologists, intuitive healers, that kind of stuff, and really going deeper into it. And uncovering, a lot of my mothering wounds, unfortunately, were caused by my own mum, and her expectations of what a good mother should look like, and her judgment of other mothers made me very, very afraid to um, look at my feelings, to feel like, oh, I can't do everything. I need to treat myself well in this process. And I'm not going to enjoy all of it, because when you're raised with a parent who says every single moment with children is pure joy, and if people don't feel that way, then I find that very, very, very sad. But there's that kind of thing. Then when you're in the thick of postnatal depression with a baby who doesn't sleep, and you have this voice in your head, you're like, well, aren't I just the biggest fuck up on the planet?
yeah, aren't
Aren't
I
I
a
just
terrible
wrecking this
person?
whole situation?
Mm,
So to do that work of healing and being confident in myself in the way that I am, and knowing that I'm going to give my kids a gift, in that when they go in, if they choose to become parents, um, I am going to say, yeah, it's fucking tough, doll, and I'm just here for you. I'm
yeah.
here for whatever it looks like for you, and whatever you need and whatever baby needs. I'm just here for you. I'm not here to be mother of the year. I'm not here to win any awards. I'm just here to support what is. Um, so I feel like that's a good gift that's come out of that
Yeah.
situation.
It's almost like if you could say that to yourself in that moment, to be
Mm.
that, if you could go back and say that. Just a little side note, I have never heard the realization that something like CBT may be more of a neurotypical therapy, and it doesn't always work for. That is mind blowing for me. I'm sorry I haven't heard that before, and everybody else knows that. I have children who are, on
Yeah.
different challenges, and I've noticed that it doesn't work with one of them. That's wow. That's something new
It's
for me
it's
too.
a new revelation for me too, don't worry. Um, and I found this out because last year my assistant, my wonderful assistant, she has a degree in psychology, and she's very, very knowledgeable about this stuff. And she was like, "Hey, I'm just noticing that you're really in a spiral at the moment. You can't get out of your own mindset. So what's happening? Are you getting therapy? You were going to therapy. What's happening?" And I said, "I was going to therapy, and it was CBT, but I just found it made me worse." And she was like, "Oh, that's because you're neurotypical, like you're neurodivergent doll." And I was like, "What? Why didn't anyone tell
Why
me?"
doesn't anybody? Oh my gosh.
And there isn't necessarily a gold standard for neurodivergent people. It is just based on whatever works for you in your experience. And so for some people, that means things like equine therapy is going to be the best for them, because it's going to help the nervous system feel at ease and allow them to work on whatever's happening in a way that works for them. So I went back to my kinesiologist after that, and I was like, this actually works shit tons better for me than therapy.
But it worries me so much how many mums do go down that traditional path and don't feel any different or feel worse, and then
Mm.
stop and go back to that story, the very original story, which is, there's something wrong with me, I must be a terrible mother.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. Totally. So yeah, the hippie healing modalities work better for me. So the
Mm.
work of Kerry Rowett in Hero Boga has been
Oh,
enormously helpful in resolving a whole bunch of my stuff around family. And also because they can see from an energetic level, oh, what the story that you see happening here of your mother is the grand supreme of all mothers and everyone else fails at your feet. They can go and be like, no, it sounds like your mum's got some confidence issues. And so that is the story she wants to tell, but it's not a story that you have to tell yourself.
And that lands differently than the way that we talk
Yeah.
through it in therapy. Wow.
Mm.
And so as you've done that work, I would love to talk to you also about, the courage to dive into those types of wounds and to explore that, because that's also what I hear a lot from mums over the years that I've been holding spaces like this, that they know there's something there, but when you're also just knee deep in the toddlers and in trying to keep things above, like, I don't know if it's even healthy for me or if I have the ability to open that door. So again, I'm wondering 14 years later, there's how do we do this? How do we process this so we can get to a stage where we're fully accepting of who we are when we're also trying to just keep the kids alive? and
Oh, it is bananas that it all
bananas.
happens. And also the very fact that all of your stuff around your childhood will come up when you become a parent, because you are seeing like this other little being in the world, and you're like noticing what it would have been like for you. And the statistics show that you are more likely to start entering into conflict with your own parents and your own family of origin when you have your first baby, because all of a sudden you're like, you may have been able to be like the perfect daughter or the best sister, all those kinds of things. And then all of a sudden you have a baby, and you have to create your own tree, and you have to break off your family tree in order to put your own stick in the ground and root it into the earth and build a tree for your own family. It's the separation between family of origin and family of creation. And there's going to be grief attached to that. And there will be some resistance. And that resistance might come from you. It might come from your parents. It might come from your siblings being like, why aren't you being exactly the person that we've always expected you to be? We expect for you to do this. And you're like, well, I can't fucking do that because I've got to keep this other being alive now.
Yeah.
And I can't be the same person because my primary responsibility now is to this tiny little being, not to these adults from my childhood.
I mean, at the very core of my work is the idea of matrescence, or this theory of matrescence, where we really form a new identity through motherhood, just like adolescence is that time between child and adult, where we really, everything, not only hormones and physical changes, but psychological changes, social changes, economic changes, and it's this period we have to understand and support better. And again, you've just given me another element to drop into that about this moving from family of origin to family of creation, that we're moving away from this sense of who I am in this family tree and needing to start again. And we're not only starting again there on our own, but we're doing that with a partner most of the time. And so you've got these two families of origins that are breaking apart and coming together. Oh, I mean, it's just mind-blowing that we don't acknowledge that this is actually the process of becoming a parent.
Yeah. And forming your own family and forming your own family tree. Like, it is intense. And that process nearly broke me. Like, I felt like I had all of these responsibilities still to my family of creation. And it felt like they were taking over. Like, my first loyalty was to my family of origin instead of my family of creation. And it caused an enormous amount of conflict with my family. It caused an enormous amount of conflict with my partner. And I felt so conflicted between this little being that I was trying to raise but still fulfilling these other roles. And I had to go through that therapy process and really start setting really strong boundaries with my family of origin, in order to, emerge with pride in how I was able to parent and a good, strong relationship with my husband, and a good foundation for our family of creation.
That's it, because we're just planting the foundation now. We have no idea how this is going to grow and what the branches will be. We were talking before we hit record about how different our children are. Like, one will be the beautiful, quiet, sort of creative one, and the other one's the wild one. We don't know what we're planting, and that's also incredibly scary.
Yeah, and it changes over the ages as well. Like my chill kid was not a chill kid when she was a toddler. Like the one that's the soft and sweet one now was like the first 2 years were so awful. Like
Yes, that's it. I know.
they swap personalities. It's
Yeah.
constant.
Yes, and they'll keep doing that for a bit more. You
Mm,
said in your post as well that you don't know what's changed, but you're suddenly, able to speak like this and you're suddenly able to claim all of that. I mean, obviously, you're referring to there's lots of therapy and inner work and whatever. But do you think there's also been something that has allowed you to just finally say, this is it? This is who I am, I'm done? Or has it been a really slow process? Because again, so often I think that we feel like there's going to be a moment where suddenly we're going to feel okay with who we are and the role that we're playing.
mm,
And I think that's part of this myth. You get that book
yeah,
or do that course, and then suddenly I'm just going to feel different next week. So,
yeah.
yes, no.
Yeah. It was like long and winding. And so, with my first daughter, I was going through so much pain. When I didn't have a kid, when I had a kid who didn't sleep, two, I just had completely unrealistic expectations of parents. My parents had completely unrealistic expectations of who I would be as a parent and as a daughter. Um, it was it was a fucking schmozzle, honestly. And of course, I developed crippling postnatal depression and anxiety. And then I would hear my mum's voice in the head going, "Well, I just don't understand why people have postnatal depression. It's just so sad. They're just not enjoying their children." It's like, oh, fuck, I love this child so much, but I am struggling. Um, and I remember hanging out with two friends one night, and one of them said to me, "One day you're going to write about this. You're going to write about your postnatal depression." And I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I am like, at that point, I called myself a life coach. I was like, I am not, nobody wants to hear about me on the floor having a panic attack between stirs. And I was like, so sure I would never write about it. And then I discovered like I would just start sharing a little bit more of the truth and a little bit more of what I was going through. And each time I would get these messages of like, oh my God, me too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, me too. I feel the same way. Thank God somebody else said it. And
Mm.
it just got me braver and bolder. And as I kept on, tending to myself and doing the therapy and stuff, um, I got to a point where I was like, oh, it's going to be healing for me to write about this and to share about this and say that it's not okay. I don't have to live with this constant anxiety of just saying that everything's wonderful and every single moment's a joy.
Mm.
I can actually be truthful, and that will help.
And what was the autism diagnosis experience like? And what relief or peace or uncertainty did that bring?
Ooh, for me, it was mostly shock because I had no clue. I was late diagnosed, and it was because a whole bunch of my friends over the space of 6 months all got their autism diagnosis, and they'd share it with me, and I'd go, "Well, what the fuck? Because you're like the coolest people I know. This is so weird. This is the weirdest because I get along with you guys so well, and we actually like." This is
But
weird.
no.
And then I thought, you know what? No, to be a good friend, what I'll do is I'll read up about it. And one of them had mentioned that it was autism symptoms are different for women than it is for boys because the founding research was based on little white boys, of course, because it always is.
Indeed.
So looking at it from a female diagnosis. So I looked up the checklist for female autism and I read through it to try and understand my friends better. And it felt like all of my insights had been pulled out, like insides had just been spilled onto a page, and every single thing I thought was unique about me was actually autism. And I knew it was like the whole world fell out beneath me. And I thought, oh, that's why. That's the reason for everything. That's the reason why I found it. I was a late speaker. It's the reason why I didn't make friends until I was in year 5. It's the reason why I decided that girls were too socially complex for me in high school. And so I was only going to hang out with boys because they were simple. Like everything. It's the reason why. Um,
Wow.
and it felt like just an enormous revelation. So the self-diagnosis came first, and that was like, oh, holy shit, the world falling out, but finally so much relief in knowing who I was. And then I didn't get formally diagnosed for like 6 years after that. And so when she was like, oh yeah, by the way, you're diagnosed with autism, I was like, no shit, obviously. It'd be so funny if I wasn't.
Yes, because again, I've heard women often go down this path because their child is diagnosed.
Mm.
Like they go through the process. And we've had a number of beautiful mothers on the podcast who share that. Like when they're in the doctor's office and the doctor's going through the checklist, and they're sitting there thinking, that's kind of me actually. And it's
Yeah.
both a ground shifting, falling apart, but also, oh, now that makes sense. And then they start to rebuild this new sense of identity along with their child at the same time. So I've heard how it can very much bring both of those senses. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the shock for me was in the autism diagnosis. She was like, oh, by the way, you've also got ADHD. And I was like, sorry? Hey, what? Hey, now it's like, yeah, like your working memory is not good. And I was like, what? So it was
That was
a more emotional experience to discover that because I just wasn't expecting it.
Yeah. And how did you process that?
I thought about it for a while and like it started making more sense. And then when I decided to go to a psychiatrist, to try out medication and stuff, it was like, I definitely felt a huge amount of grief around it because the ADHD stuff is the stuff that's actually caused me more stress in my life than autism, I think. Like, oh, why is like housekeeping like such a challenge for me? And why do I find laundry just the worst thing on fucking earth? Oh, this is why. And then building in the supports around that has been useful. However, I did definitely find with the ADHD diagnosis that I definitely experienced, when you get diagnosed with ADHD, you can have an exacerbation of your symptoms. So I think I had about 6 months where I just drove myself crazy with my ADHD-ness because I was like, oh, I can't remember that. That's because of my executive functioning. And it just makes it so much worse. It's just this little disgusting part of it. But now it's fine.
Okay. Oh, thank you for saying that, though, because, this is the point, isn't it? We want to normalize all of these reactions and experiences and changes. And then when I think about how prolific you have been over the last how many years, when was your first Goal Getter workbook? When did that all begin?
The first Goal Getter book came out 2009. But I've been blogging since 2004 and I've been selling online since 2002.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just amazing to have gone through all of that as well. 2 children, those different experiences. It's almost like that was your expression of who you were, and we've all seen that evolve and change, and it just always feels so incredibly real. It's what I've always loved about everything you put out there. There is, well, from my perspective, and I know that it's true, there is no real strategy in the sense of who you're pretending to be. There's lots of strategy in terms of you've got a brilliant business brain. The intention has always been, this is who I am. Can we stop pretending we need to be somebody else? Let's do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it doesn't make sense to me why I would start a job where I could fake more things. Like, I kind of had 2 career choices really. Like I started in the Australian government in Canberra and I could have just stayed in that forever, but I was like, no, I really want a creative, soulful career about my passions. So I could stay and keep pretending, to be someone or not, or I could create a business and I'm not going to turn around and like create the same effect in my business of trying to be someone I'm not. Like I want this to be like a real expression of me. Plus it's too exhausting to try and be.
Yes, I mean, knowing you now and knowing this beautiful energy, I can't imagine you in a government job in Canberra. I mean, but this is what so many of us discover in motherhood as well, is that, we discover this other passion, this creativity, this side of ourselves that maybe I wanted to start a business or maybe I want to do something different. I can't fit back into that box again. And I think that's also so many women come to things like this because that's how they feel. There's something changed in them. And they look back and go, oh, I can't go and do that again. And so they start looking What else can I do? What do I love? What do I want to create and contribute?
Mm. I was like, I do want to be clear. Like, I was always nuts in the public service as well. Like, I used to have like hugging competitions, and I'd hug like 300 people in a department in one day, and just, be
Gosh.
like, oh, let's go. Like, just like I would like have angel card readings at my desk and give like managers little massages in the lifts. And I always said it was like taking glitter into the belly of the beast.
Yes.
Just take glitter wherever you go. So I tried to bring as much nuts as I could, but this is just like nuts times a
Yes.
million.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I mean, I really am so incredibly grateful for that post and for the way that you are talking about this and the honesty and vulnerability of our spiky bits, the ugly bits of this experience. As you said, when your daughters grow and if they decide to be parents, this is what I hope they will be okay to share and feel right from the beginning. I think we almost need to be talking to them as teenagers about how these inside bits feel, and it's okay to say them out loud and share with them. And that's how we do it as mums first. So
Yeah.
thank
I
you.
think like the best thing that I can ever say to my kids is like when they do something wrong or embarrassing or whatever, I'm like, oh my God, babes, wait to hear what I've done.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally get it.
Mm.
Like I remember when one of my kids was so much younger but she wet her pants and she was so upset about it. And I cleaned her up and then I was like, wait till you hear about this. When I was pregnant with you, I spewed so much that I wet myself and I shit myself at the same time as I was spewing. She was like, disgusting. And I was like, still going to be like way messier than you, babes.
Yeah. And I'm okay. And we can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, can
This
you
is
imagine me like just out on the ground in the front yard, just blah, blah, crying.
doing our
Okay.
wins.
Magic. Magic. We've all been there. Who hasn't? Who
Been
hasn't shit themselves?
exactly, while vomiting. We've all done that. Oh, thank you. I absolutely adore you and your energy and your work. And thank you for sharing this with this amazing community. I'll put all of the details for how people can follow and connect with you in the show notes. But thank you for your divine honesty, Leonie. It's truly unique and needed.
Oh, bless you, Amy. And thank you for doing the work to create this space for people. It's just so important that we have these talks and that we can be real with each other. We can be hags together, just creating our little coven of hags.
Oh my God, I love that. I feel like you need to do a drawing around that for us.
Okay, done. Yes,
Done.
that's actually sure. I've got a task list that I could do today, but pretty sure my assistant will understand if this is what I get distracted with instead.
Exactly. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
Oh, lots of love, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks, as always, for being a part of our global Matrescence community. Please take a moment and make sure you're subscribed to this podcast in your podcast player so you can always be notified of our next episode. And if you would like to work with a coach on your own experience of matrescence, please go to mamarising.net and explore our directory of phenomenal coaches, workshop leaders, space holders and facilitators around the globe. You can also explore our Global Matrescence Foundation and consider donating so a mama in need can access the support of one of our coaches and still ensure that our coaches receive the income and support they need so they can continue to work in this way. And finally, if you would like to be a coach, a facilitator, and a matrescence activist in your own community, jump on our waitlist for our next intake of the Mama Rising Facilitator Training at mamarising.net. Thank you for being here and being part of this movement. Until next week, bye.